Later in the programme, we'll hear from Jason Moorhouse on some of his October Tynwald questions about young people not in work or education, government flip-flopping on apprenticeship support, reservoir repairs, are they over the top, and concerns in the South over changes in the rating system. But first, is government's whistleblowing policy fit for purpose? Well, a new Tynwald Committee has been set up to answer that very question. I spoke to Julie Edge shortly after the October sitting about her two motions. What were you trying to achieve from them, and do you think the outcome you've got is what you're looking for?
I'm really pleased that I got the support to have the select committee set up for whistleblowing. I think it's a really important piece. And then obviously the other motion was with regards to the whistleblowing policy that had just recently been published, which I'm quite concerned about because there was clear issues with that policy that got published. And, I did say it during the debate, it should be pulled until it's corrected because it's got wrong facts in it with regards to support for people being able to go to the Tynwald Ombudsman. And, I'm aware that some people have tried that approach and they've been told that you can't deal with employment matters. That really does need clearing up significantly. And
these weren't just your sort of full-on throwaway lines. These were lines that were actually agreed by the people on the other side of the debate who said, yes, there are elements of this that perhaps need rethinking.
Yeah. And, the policy being updated was important because the legislation's changed. But the only thing that the only thing I expected to be changed, because we were told there was no significant changes, was the prescribed persons list. However, when you went into the depth of the policy, it had been changed in many ways. And, that's a key piece, that it hadn't been to the unions in draft form before it came out as a final document. That's significant to the workforce within government, that a policy of that nature, which is supposed to go for negotiations with all the representative bodies, hasn't happened before it was published. I'm sure they've tried to publish it to please please me because I had the motion. However, it's probably caused them more issues and it really needs to go back to the PSC. The other concern that I really had in it was with regards to the secretary of the PSC also being the head of OHR, and then we're going to be in the policy putting everything through OHR. I'm sorry, that's pure conflict, shouldn't be allowed to happen because the PSC put the policy in. OHR are supposed to ensure it's implemented and put into practice. And how can that happen when you've got the one individual role sitting on both sides of the camp? I'm very concerned about it.
Because, of course, this is about whistleblowing. And I imagine if you are someone who has had a significant concern about a workplace-related issue and you want to raise that, you want to be sure that there aren't going to be any implications to you about trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's the best words, Phil. Everybody that comes forward, or anybody I've supported or spoken to, they want to do the right thing. They're bringing up a concern at work for the public of the Isle of Man, and that's their concern. There's something not right here. I'm raising it. They raise it, and then it goes into the whistleblowing arena, and we should be actually encouraging people to come forward with concerns at work, not hindering them, not making it go through a process that they're already nervous of because, OHR is supposed to be their supporting body in the workplace as well. So it was really concerning because we should be encouraging people to come forward. They're protecting the public when they come forward.
There are, though, I suppose, whistleblowers who are basically campaigning because they don't like a particular policy or a particular issue. How would you see those people being dealt with? I mean, people who have genuine concerns about, I don't know, the safety in which that their area of work is being conducted, you could see how that's a genuine whistleblowing issue. But perhaps if someone just disagrees with the policy direction, there's going to be a different way of handling those two issues, I imagine.
Yes, there is, and that did come out in the debate. There is clear confusion with some of my colleagues as to the differences there. I'm fortunate because I worked in the public sector for 38 years and do know the policies and how you split them out. What you actually need is strong leaders and managers that are well trained to understand what the issue is that's been brought to them and act on that. And I think a lot of people get frustrated because it's not acted on immediately. And they then go into this long-winded process, and some people are getting suspended because they've raised concerns. And it's like, they're a problem. Let's get them out of the workplace, rather than actually, are they bringing a real issue and problem to us? And let's look at that for the safety and protection of the people of the Isle of Man. Some of it could be financial that people are bringing forward. I know that we've introduced integrity lines since the last committee. However, there was questions around that from some individuals I've spoken to as to the confidentiality of it. And all I've seen from this new policy, I'll be perfectly honest, is internalising more. So no independence for the individual. So that really is a no-no for me, because we need to have some clear independence that people can be confident in a process and bring that trust back into the services.
And does the new version of the policy, the whistleblowing policy, does that actually preclude people from coming to their MHK with an issue?
The policy in 2022 actually took politicians out of it, and I did challenge at that time. It was definitely in there in 2016. It clearly said if you were reporting a senior officer that you could go to the minister or the chair, so obviously the political chairs of the statutory boards. I've never had an answer as to why that was removed. I challenged the Chief Minister with a question in Tynwald, and I didn't get an answer. Who advised them that that was the right thing to do? And basically what we've done by removing that is you cannot complain or you cannot bring a case before senior officers, and that's appalling in our governance of our it's a real serious issue in governance, and it needs to be fixed.
And that, I mean, it does seem, well, I don't know, I imagine people listening will think that it is a bit strange, to say the least, that their politicians can't be approached in these circumstances. Now, I know in the debate there was discussion that perhaps MHKs, MLCs need or aren't as well trained as the relevant officers that people are supposed to go and speak to. Perhaps there's a point there.
Yes, but we have had in Tynwald, since I've been raising these issues since I came in 2016, we have had training from the Attorney General's office. It's available. There's online processes as well. But we shouldn't be enabling a block in anywhere in this, is my view. If somebody's got a concern, we should all be open to listen to the concern. It doesn't mean to say it'll be whistleblowing, or is it an employment matter? It doesn't matter. It's actually somebody's had that confidence to come forward to speak out on behalf of the people of the Isle of Man. And that's the key point that everybody should remember. They're speaking out for a reason. Let's have a look at it, do an investigation if required, and have an outcome, rather than this, another whistleblower is what I feel. And, if there has been a breakdown in confidence with officers since the big case of Dr. Anson, we need to address that, and we should be looking at that and bringing that confidence back into the system, not trying to stifle the people that are coming forward and speaking up. And that's what this appears to have done to me. However, we've got the committee, which I'm grateful for. Colleagues have supported that. The key thing, I think, that came across to me during the debate was we shouldn't be getting involved in employment matters. This is policy matters. It might be about employment, but it's policy, and the policy's failing the employee at the present time, in my opinion.
So, obviously, you've got a committee. Who were the other members? Because you were elected onto that committee. Who else was on that?
Yeah, the other members are Anne Corlett, Douglas Central, Gary Clewitt, MLC, the Bishop Hillis, and Tim Glover from Arbury Castan and Malone.
So, effectively, then, your job is to look at the existing policy, to consider how it works, and I presume come back to Tynwald with recommendations if you find something that needs changing.
Yeah, it's going to, obviously it's a follow-up really to the report that was that I was chair of that committee at that time. In February 21, I think it was published, and then obviously we debated it. It's to follow up on that really, because what I'm actually seeing is policy and process is not being followed, and we need to ensure that the policies and everything that was recommended at that time. There has been some significant improvements. The Employment Act has been updated, but it's the internal parts that seem to be failing any individuals that are coming forward. And what we should be doing as a Parliament is protecting the island from any further detrimental damage if a whistleblower comes forward, and that's really what I'm looking for, is a full review of what was recommended then, what we've seen then, has it been fixed? If not, we're going to have to fix it, because the reputation of the island is most important.
So if I happen to be a government employee at the moment, and I was particularly concerned about an issue that was happening at work, and I couldn't speak to my manager about it because they were actually potentially part of the reason why this issue was there. What are you saying should happen? I mean, are you saying that those people in those circumstances can come to their politicians and at least discuss the issue, but also follow the whistleblowing policy which requires them to speak to senior officers in the service?
Yeah, I think majority of people that I have spoken to have gone through the policy, and they come to politicians as a last resort because they've been blocked either in the policy or in the process, or they might still be in that process, but it's obviously going a little bit wrong, so they just want some advice and support really, and that's what our job is as an MHK. We're here to support everybody out there. We're national politicians, but if they bring an issue to you and it doesn't sound right, we can go off and look and check into it. Clearly, if it's in tribunal stage, we can't interfere with any of the processes. However, if there's a failure in the process or the policy following, we can look into that for them, and it's wrong to actually take us out of a significant policy that really is designed, whistleblowing is designed to protect the public purse, because that's what everybody's doing. They will be whistleblowing on a really serious matter in the workplace. And
I mean, I'm not as familiar perhaps as I should be with the existing policy, but does the policy specifically preclude people from speaking to their Tynwald members?
We just don't exist in the flow diagram at all, and the prescribed persons list doesn't have politicians on it. And I understand why people are concerned about that, because we're not a prescribed person. They are nervous of that and being connected, but whether we can advise people, we're not a prescribed person for this, but we can help support you in this, and this. And I think that's the key differential. I would have preferred to see politicians as prescribed persons. We're an island, we can do things differently here, and we should be open to listening to any concerns that come forward. But it's following the processes, and the policy is key. Is that happening? I'm not so sure it's happening as we think from the previous report, and certainly the detrimental damage that we've seen with the big case on the island. We need to ensure that the behaviours and the changes that were recommended through the Wright report and that have been instigated and corrected. Let's see, that's the job of the committee now, to review and look at all this to make sure that the previous report recommendation been put in. Anything from the Wright report should be included. And one of the key elements of the motion was to make sure that any of the organisations of government are following the acts and the legislation accordingly.
That was Oncan MHK Julie Edge, who, subsequent to the interview, has been made chair of this new committee. Next, Jason Moorhouse on his October Tynwald questions. You, as is your wont, had quite a few questions on the order paper. The one that the two, I suppose, that I'm interested in particularly, but we'll maybe touch on the others, you had a question to the Treasury Minister about how many 18 to 21-year-olds were out of a job or education. You had a question to the Chief Minister about what factors led to the change whereby larger employers would be paid to support apprentices and what the impact of the change is. Now, I thought those were linked, but they kind of are, but not as linked as I thought. Yeah,
there are links, but really with two distinct areas. My main concern with the apprenticeship has been going on for at least 9 months. That there did appear to be a shortfall in terms of the number of work placements that are available. And I've asked the Enterprise Minister, I've asked the Education Minister, and I've got no clear answer. Then at the government conference, we had bingo. There was going to be a need to actually provide additional funding for large companies so that the apprentice placements would fall into place. And Ralph come back and said, what actually is going on here? And the answer I got wasn't quite as transparent as I'd hoped for.
You're not suggesting the Chief Minister wouldn't be completely open and honest with you?
Well, it did provide a number in terms of it was going to cost $244,000, but it wasn't clear in terms of what that actually related to, and he kind of spluttered it out in the final moment of his initial answer. So when I came back to that, I was disappointed that we didn't have any clarity. It was also interesting that it was announced in September at the conference, so 3 weeks kind of into September, and we had no real kind of reflection on why there was a decision to actually backdate it to April. So all these employers who are actually offering these placements suddenly have got this windfall, but he wasn't able to tell us how much the windfall was. So it was an interesting kind of twist that money's being paid, and now he's taken on responsibility to save us money. He's actually spending it perhaps at a greater rate than we'd have been hoping for.
And I suppose if you were a larger employer who already had apprentices, and you then discover that other larger employers are going to get paid to do something that you were doing for free, you might be saying, well, actually, I wouldn't mind a little piece of that money as myself.
Well, that's it. I think all those companies will now get the support, and it is important they do get the support because apprenticeships are really valuable. It's a way forward for the actual individual, but also the companies benefit. And it's not a vast amount of money that's being paid, and it was just the kind of the reflection that this government had done another U-turn quietly up at the Comis. Well, people weren't perhaps paying the full attention. It was quite concerned that had happened.
And then in terms of the under 21s or 18 to 21-year-olds, were you content with the answer the Treasury Minister gave?
It was a difficult one because he wasn't able to answer the question in the form I'd asked for, because I was really wanting to know about the long-term unemployed, because that's kind of a real problem area, and he wasn't able to give us a figure on that, but he did give us an indication of the number of individuals who were in this category, which it's a relatively low number, but at that age when they're not actively in work or education, every single one of them is concerning. So that is something that needs to be looked at. But also it did raise concerns about the number who actually were unable to work due to health-related issues, and that was a far higher figure for all the 3 years I asked for. So there is definitely work that needs to be done there, because if these people are taking this option either through an active decision or through circumstances that they could be helped with. It needs to be looked at, and a way forward needs to be found.
One of the other questions that I wanted to highlight was the Kringle reservoir, and particularly the dam and the works that are being undertaken there. I mean, is it not a good thing that the MUA is making sure that the dam is safe? Because quite frankly, if it burst, it would be quite damaging to the people who live in the area, the runoff area right the way down to the sea.
Of course, but the issue here is in terms of the spillway that is taking that water away. So it's actually looking at that as a distinct entity and comparing what we've had for the last 80 years with what is being created at the moment is substantially different. I just wanted to raise that as an issue at a time when we're trying to cut back on costs, at a time when we're actually looking at the environment. We've got such a massive steel and concrete being placed where we had a nice traditional wall. It just seems to be, extreme and very costly. So I just wanted to kind of check that we were actually doing the right thing in the right way, and that it was going to come in on time and budget. And unfortunately, the budget looks positive, but in terms of time, there are going to be challenges.
And the answer that you got from Chairman John Wannenberg was actually the very things that you'd stated. That it was a nice Manx stone wall construction is the very reason why it's starting to fail, and that's why you need the steel and the concrete. And I suppose, would any of your constituents thank you for scrimping a little bit on steel and concrete if when we're really talking about their safety?
I think here we've actually gone to a X level with the degree of engineering. The walls are a metre higher, they're significantly thicker than they were originally. In terms of the outflow, it's only going to be on a rare occasion there's more than a trickle of water in this vicinity. So I think it was a good question that needs to be asked, because all government spending does need to be looked at and considered, and as a backbencher, that's my role, and to bring this forward is an important thing to do.
And then your final question related to the development of the Rating Valuation Amendment Bill consultation, which it does seem to have altered a little since it was first announced, this consultation.
Yeah, it is still worrying from the point of view that we're going forward with something that does seem to have been designed on the back of a fag packet. In terms of the data that's being used, it is questionable. The Minister did speak in terms of trying to provide some reassurance, but it wasn't really there, and it didn't look as confident as he usually looks. And it was really quite concerning that there was a suggestion that they were looking at a 5-year period, but we actually take somewhere like Maloo and they actually take the lowest figure from the 5 years. Something isn't quite right.
And the whole purpose of this, I mean, it's a pretty open secret, is to have a pop at Bride commissioners because they wouldn't play ball over the Northern Civic Amenity site. And Bride, of course, is the biggest example of a local authority that relies on quarry rates for their income.
That may well be true, but at the same time, I've got to look after my constituents. When you look at somewhere like Maloo, where it's 20% of the annual revenue that's coming into the local authority, they're going to be thinking how to actually cover this. And one possibility is pushing the domestic rates up, which is a concern if you actually get something done in a way that's not really being considered by many local people, especially when the Cabinet Office had a presentation in Castletown only about 2 weeks ago promoting the offshore wind consultation. You think, well, why isn't the Treasury actually having a consultation in Maloo and Albury to explain to local people, this is what we're considering, what do you think? I've written a letter to the Treasury Minister, I've sent some letters out, I've put a letter on social media, and I think it's really important that people actually look at this and consider possible consequences.
I mean, there are lots of anomalies in the rating system. is there any, well, obviously, other than the bride situation, are there any other reasons being given as to why specifically quarries are being picked on when things, well, for example, industrial estates seem to be being largely ignored?
It just seems to be an area that's being focused on, and I would suggest it's being focused on for the wrong reasons. And it's been suggested that Bride had this advantage that, may be a reason for it. But at the same time, if we're going to take action as a government, it must be done in an equitable way where all the people who are going to be affected know about it and have got the chance to put forward their thoughts.
And I suppose then what you're saying is the ratepayers in Arbury and Rushen and the ratepayers in Maloo are going to be affected by this.
Almost certainly, and that's a really big concern. I did bring up the question about the Kringle quarry and the way in which we've had not the level of clarity that one would expect in terms of how much that cut in royalties is affecting the commissioners and how that could impact on rates as early as next year. And I still don't feel that the Treasury Minister has given us the clarity which we would expect him to give on something of such significance. And I feel quite concerned that he basically turned the tables back on the commissioners and said they look for cuts, they look for ways to make this money up. And if you actually look at the Arbury and Rushen commissioners, they're very efficient and there isn't a lot of give in terms of their budget. So, it's a real worry.
That was Arbury, Castletown and Maloo MHK Jason Moorhouse, who has said some very kind things about the local authority I work for. I'm mentioning that for transparency reasons. So, what do you think? Would you be concerned as a government employee that the rules suggest you can't talk to MHKs on whistleblowing issues? Is enough being done to ensure our young people have both opportunity and encouragement to become productive members of society? Let me know your thoughts on the programme by contacting Phil Gaughan at manxradio.com, and please get in touch if you have any ideas for future shows. Don't forget this programme is available as a podcast. For now, I'm Phil Gaughan. Go to Myos and Geisha. Thanks for listening.